What's up, guys? Boy, do we have a fun one for you today. We have Will Hoge coming up on this interview. He's talking directly to artists, to songwriters. He's going to tell you his story, and then he's going to tell you how it applies to you. This is next level information, and he's going to explain to you what really moves the needle for artists in this industry. He's written songs that will truly stand the test of time. He's given his advice on being an independent artist and on working with labels. He's got both sides of the coin. This is a killer interview. This is something that's going to really be valuable for artists, and he tells you guys how to move the needle in this industry. Cannot say enough good things. You're in for a treat. Get ready. All right, guys, welcome. Today we are joined by Will Hoge, Tennessee-born songwriter and road warrior who's built one of the most resilient and respected careers in modern music. Across 15 studio albums, multiple reinventions, publishing breakthrough that reshaped his trajectory, Will has become a blueprint for artists trying to carve out their own lane in Nashville. We're here to unpack the real story behind the journey, the work, the lessons, and the strategy that's driven a decades-long career. Will Hoge, welcome to the show. Thank you for coming, man.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We're grateful to have you here. I'd like to start with something a little deeper and just dive right into it if you're up for it. You interested?
Yeah, why not?
All right. I'm wondering about the distinctive moment. As you're a young artist, a lot of the audience that we have is these new up and coming artists here in Nashville. It's the people that are in the studios that are tracking their first records, that are dropping their first singles, those kinds of things. And I'm wondering about that distinctive moment when you finally realized you had made it, where you had been doing the grind and then it clicked.
Well, I don't know. I don't know that there's a definitive I've made it because the goalposts change each time you make it. The first thing is just you've made it. If you have written enough songs to make a record, there's a point where that is a moment where you've made it, and then you have to decide as an artist, is that all you wanted? Is that making it, or was this, oh, okay, I made it to here, and then what is your next goal? Then it's like, because even just within that, making a record, writing enough songs for a record is making it, and then making a record and actually finishing a record is making it. And then you got to figure out how you're going to put out a record. And once you do that, that's making it. And then you just continue to make it over and over and over again, I think, until you just decide. I guess there are people that decide they just don't want to make it anymore, and then they go and get real jobs, and there's nothing wrong with that either. But I don't know, and I mean that more encouragingly than discouragingly. I just don't think there's a definitive moment of making it. There are these little victories along the way, and sometimes they're a big victory, but you still, at the end of the day, you have that victory and you go to bed, and then you wake up the next day and decide whether you want to make it again or not.
It's almost like those small wins, each one of them creates your next definition for success along the journey.
Yeah, and there's little things along the way. I was just talking to my wife has started a new business, and they're just a couple of months in, and I was recounting. I remember my first guitar player, who was a dear friend and kind of a mentor to me. Real early on in the process, he was saying that one of the first signs of success is when you can say no to anything. Because there's a point when you first start, it's just like, look, we got $150 for a gig in Denver, and you're just like, yeah, I'll take it. And then you figure out how you're going to do it and all of that. And then there is a point where you go, okay, this thing that I have said yes to all of these times that's helped, there is a time where you have to go, okay, I can't do that anymore. Or, I'm not going to sleep on people's couches anymore. So no to that. And that becomes a moment of making it. Just even in the ability and the power to say no to something is a level of making it.
Hey, Dallas, we're going to cover a lot of Will's journey here, but Will has made his 15th studio album, came out in August, called Sweet Misery. WillHoge.com is where you can find everything you need to know about Mr. Hoge. Will, for your number 7 album cycle, I had read in press reports where you had said at that time you might have been listening to a lot of late 80s era Tom Petty and early 90s era Tom Petty um, during the writing and recording of that process. And the new record you're promoting comes with a new sonic sound rooted in power pop, possibly. So I want to know, was there any reference material that helped guide this record for you in the process?
No, I mean, I think this was more of an amalgam of lots of records that I'd listened to growing up, lots of just sort of great rock and roll records. I think the two things that really made this record a little more raw, right before I had recorded this record, we had gone back and re-recorded, well, remixed and remastered my very first record for vinyl, which we'd never done before. And then we went and re-recorded the second record because the masters had gotten lost years ago in a fire out in California. And so I think I had just revisited those two records, which sounds weird to say that I was inspired by my own work, but it was more of a remembrance of like, oh, I remember really loving just having a rock and roll band in the studio playing together. And then coming off of the record that I had just done previously, where it was a solo project where I had done everything. It was really stripped down and really quiet. I just felt like it was a more of a return to those great moments of just, folks in a room playing really loudly together, which was really fun to get to do.
Just a couple points about the new record. The title track, sounds great. I love it a lot. Within the title track, there's seems to be four notes of a harmonica solo that sounds right off the bat. It's kind of referencing Springsteen's Promised Land, and that seems to be a thing where you leave musical breadcrumbs along the way throughout your whole body of recorded work. So that's one thing that I liked and noticed, and getting ready for this, I listened to a lot. I listened to like 80% of your catalog, re-listened to most of it, Will. And another thing, Will, is I thought I realized what my favorite Will Hoge albums were, and I think I have to readdress that now.
Well,
Reassess it.
that's good.
Um,
As long as you like at least a couple of them, then we're winning. So that's good.
oh yeah, I love it all. And then another after the output from the last few years, where you were maybe a little more angry and outspoken about current events, I thought it was funny that the conclusion that you come to is that you need a new planet.
Yeah, I've bitched enough about everything here. I got to go complain about something somewhere else. Yeah.
Yeah, great stuff. Everybody get Sweet Misery, another great sounding record from Will Hoge. Always such an enjoyment to listen to your stuff, and we wait for each new record. Dallas, what do you got?
You know, Will, you mentioned the fire, and I wanted to touch on that a little bit because I've never had the opportunity to talk to somebody who was affected in the way that you were. When you learned Blackbird on the Lonely Wire was destroyed in the Atlantic Records fire, what did that actually feel like, and how did you reach the decision to recreate the work?
I mean, there's a part that's a bummer for sure. I mean, you can't, you put so much into these recordings and things like that. I mean, fortunately, I mean, there's still CD copies of it around. I mean, I could, I'm sure, with modern technology, we could go back and make something happen from the original recordings. Um, but I mean, yeah, so I was bummed about it because it is a part of, I guess my own personal history. Um, but I had so many other friends that have lost so much. I mean, like my friend Butch Walker lost his entire studio and all of his home and everything in a fire twice. So for me to be like, oh, I lost my recordings of a record, there's some perspective that goes into that when you think about the guys in Dawes losing all of their things. Me losing 12 recorded songs from my early 20s is really not a terrible loss. So perspective wise, that was helpful. Um, and then to re-record it, we channeled our inner Taylor Swift, who had done I thought it was a really punk rock move on her part to go and re-record those early records and kind of do them the way that she wanted to do them. And that went on a ton in the 50s. You used to find Little Richard would change record companies and then he would just go and record new masters for whatever this new company was. And Ray Charles would do the same thing. It went on for years. And then, One of my favorite things about the current state of the music business is it's the Wild West and there's no real rules anymore. And so uh, any chance I get to go in the studio and make music with guys that I love playing with is a welcome opportunity. So getting to do Blackbird all over again was just a pretty natural progression from there.
That's so true. Well, you mentioning this Wild West now is like it's one of these elements that I think a lot of modern artists don't fully recognize the trajectory of how labels have played a role throughout music history to where they are now, to the power that the independent artists have and whatnot. You have had the opportunity to do both sides of this. So you've actually seen what is it to be an independent artist, what is it to be a label artist, and you've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly of all of that. What would you say is the biggest misconceptions that artists have about both paths?
Well, I think there gets to be this conversation of a right or wrong or sort of an easy or a hard way. And the reality of it is it's a shit ton of work one way or the other. I mean, there are beautiful things about, being signed to Atlantic and there's a romanticism to that. You get to see your name on a roster of artists of people that you grew up idolizing. You get to, there are definitely some opportunities that come with major label deals and things like that, especially when I was doing that in the, late 1900s and early 2000s. But it doesn't make your records any better. And there's sacrifices that have to get made. You sort of end up playing in a game that I think a lot of people probably don't want to play in if they're real honest with themselves. I know I didn't. And then, I've done it independently, which is, a ton of work on your plate. I've done it with uh, smaller record labels, medium record labels. I mean, there's good, it's all about relationships and who's in your corner, who's really working for you. And at the end of the day, through all of it, I think the thing I've had to learn and steel myself to is just it's the work that matters. It's the people that are in your band and booking the shows and helping you in management. Those are the things like a really lifelong team is far more helpful than any of those other things.
Yeah, and it's not always the label that supplies that for you. Sometimes it's the
No,
people you bring in
for
as the
sure.
business owner of Will Hoge Enterprises. It's like, this is
Yeah.
my team. Yeah.
Right.
Hey, Will, I maintain that had you come up in the 70s and 80s, you would be on the Mount Rushmore with the Springsteens, Tom Petty's, Neil Young, John Mellencamp. Like you would be I mean, not that you aren't spoken of in the same conversation nowadays, but you're sort of from another time in a lot of ways. And but you're just as impressive. And in today in 2025, you're a very important figure on the scene. I want to let you know that I came in at 2007. I saw you open for Squeeze in New Jersey.
Oh yeah. Okay.
And I can tell you that you won a lot of fans that night, myself included. How important were those big, high profile opening slots for you back in the day when you were establishing your fan base?
I mean, they're huge. Well, and thank you for the compliments too. That's not lost on me. I appreciate even being mentioned in a sentence with all those folks is really flattering. So thank you. Yeah, those opening slots are still some of my favorite things. I mean, I still, when we're lucky enough to get some sort of opening slot now, it's still such a treat. But especially at that point, yeah, to be young and on early records and getting to go out and play for people that are established music fans, not just established bands, but these are fans that are coming to see, in 2007, you're not going to see Squeeze because they're on the radio. Like you're not a passive Squeeze fan. You're going because you grew up with Squeeze, or if you're, a younger person, somebody like your parents played Squeeze around the house, and those guys just wrote and still do write incredible songs. So it can be a little daunting to go out there because you know the opener is real unimportant in those scenarios, and it can be a little intimidating, and I've always enjoyed that. Like if you can get 45 minutes to try to win over a crowd, that's a fun game to get to play. And I relish any chance we get to do it in the past, or that we get still to do it now.
Staying on the topic of squeeze, just by their own longevity, they seem to be more important now than they were back. They were overlooked. And in a similar way, you're taking almost sort of the same type of career path. Has that been the plan all along for you?
I don't know if it's been the plan. I mean, that would sound like it was, one of my biggest frustrations and celebrations is in this whole thing is there's anybody that says they've got too much of a plan is full of shit. Like it's just it's like I remember reading something about Mike Tyson saying, every boxer's got a plan until you get punched in the face. And then it's just all bets are off. And that's sort of what this is. I mean, I'd love to tell you that I had it in my head that when I was writing my first record, that 25 years from now I'd be doing this in this way, but that's not true. I mean, you're really just sort of going like, I don't know, man, this seems cool. The plan is, I guess, if there's anything, you do take from those guys like Squeeze that are still doing it. Yeah, you just look and go, man, they've always just written really great songs. They were writing really great songs when they were on the radio. They were writing really great songs when the radio doesn't care about them anymore. And so that you take from it. And then you just keep on trying to grow and move forward. But the idea that there's a plan much further than you can outstretch your arms, I think people are being a little disingenuous when they talk about these big plans. I don't think that's a real thing.
Spot on, and especially on that whole strategy and plan kind of element. I feel like a lot of people they try and plan out their career how it's going to be before they even get into town. Sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Stars in their eyes with the whole thing. And I feel like you bring a unique perspective to this because I was listening to an interview that you did recently with the Opry, and you mentioned that your son is in a band. They
Yeah.
started up a band.
Yeah.
And I was listening, I was thinking, I was like, man, this guy probably has amazing advice for these people that are coming into town with stars in their eyes. And I'm curious what you would tell somebody that is trying to start a band, trying to get started in the industry and has never done a thing before, but plays guitar in their hometown, little hometown hero, and wants to make it, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I would tell them to continue to, I think so many people make the mistake of coming to Nashville and then just they jump on Broadway and start playing 6 nights a week, 5 hours a night of cover songs. And the reality is, there's no real future and longevity. If you want to just play music for a couple of years and make some money, great way to do it. If you want to really try to grow as an artist and a career, there's not a whole lot of worse ways to go about it. Write great songs. I would suggest you get used to practice backing up a 15 passenger van with a trailer on it. That's another one. You know, get sign up with a hotel and get your Hilton points so you can start to have a better place to stay. I mean, it's really, uh, I think the sooner you can sort of get the stars out of your eyes and really start to go, you know, it's the greatest job in the world. Don't get me wrong, but it's a job. You have to work. Like the guys and girls that are still doing this. Like if you go backstage and watch the Rolling Stones operate at this point, and you realize that those dudes have been nose to the grindstone doing the work since 1963, and they still are. Like I mean, there's people helping them load in. They're not loading their own gear anymore. But if you don't think that Mick Jagger's still strutting around keeping shit on lock, like he is. And so, I would tell the people that are new to this to get serious early, take care of yourself mentally and physically. All of that leads to better art. And then just continue to try and write great songs and, don't come to Nashville and try to be the next Jason Isbell. There's already a really good Jason Isbell. You don't need another one. You know, find your inspiration in whatever you want, but then find your own voice too, or at least look for it.
Will Hoge with us right now, willhoge.com, promoting his great new album, Sweet Misery. We love it, and this is a sweet time. Will, thank you for talking with us a little bit today. I'd like to ask you a little bit about songwriting. Going back to the album I came in on was Draw the Curtains, and what a record filled with heart-wrenching, uh, I mean gut-wrenching songs, mostly about bad relationships. So I want to know that they can't all be autobiographical, Will, because otherwise I don't think we'd be talking to you today.
No, I mean
Um,
there's bits of truth in all of them. I mean, I was fortunate enough to have a whole lot of not great relationships before I got into my current great relationship of the last 15 years. But yeah, that record was really interesting. That one I feel like was kind of a defining moment. I had lost I was out of my record deals. I was kind of without a band and was trying to figure out what I was going to do next. And my friend Ken Coomer and Charlie Bracco, we were going to make a record with a band, and then the band sort of disappeared. So we started that record with just me and an acoustic guitar and Ken playing drums, and we recorded pretty much the whole record that way. And then we had our friend Tim Marks came in and played bass, and Pat Buchanan came and played some guitar. I played some other guitars, but we really it was the first time where I had really built a record in the studio and recording it that way, where everything was built around an acoustic guitar and just rhythm. It made everything really intimate, and it's a sort of a tool that I've carried forward into every project I've worked on since then. I mean, I'm surrounded in my studio right now doing a record for an artist who's a friend of mine from Brooklyn, kind of building a similar record, uh, a record in that same similar way, which I love getting to do. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I found myself listening to a lot of the songs, thinking to myself, I'm sure glad I'm not the guy that Will Hoge singing about in this song. You know?
Yeah, there was definitely some. I hear the youthful confusion in that record when I go back and I don't listen to it a ton. I don't go back and listen a ton to things, but when I do, we've got a new musician or we're learning a song for the road. Those songs they still show up in the set. Um,
I think the sad tales permeate throughout your discography, though. I mean, fast forward to Anchors a little bit,
yeah,
but so that when you're writing, will you sit down with a determined story that you want to tell, or you pick up a guitar, and have a word come into your head, and that is the impetus for you to get started? I mean, I know it's
um,
different from time to time.
yeah, it is. It's different every time, but I think that um, I mean, most often it is sit down and play something and you just sort of start mumbling out things. And then I've always got a notebook handy that's full of, or, now a cell phone that you type some lyric ideas or story ideas into. And, occasionally you get one that just falls out fully fleshed. Those are certainly always a favorite just because it's like, well, that was a nice little gift for showing up and doing the work. But yeah, it tends to be a mix of those things. And I think that as you get older and you make records as much as I have, there's a point where it's the editing, I think, more so than the writing is pretty easy. I mean, you can literally just put a pen on paper and start writing words and, linking things together. There's never a shortage of words. The question is, like you're saying, is how do you make this a story or something that's interesting? And so you just sort of word vomit and then pull things out and go, okay, this is I'm enjoying the craft of writing probably more than I ever have, and that sort of process. I think it used to be something that was pretty fast, um, and it's a little slower process. Not slower is not the right word, but it's a more deliberate process now than I think it was just rapid fire maybe when I was younger. Now there's a little more time and care taken to make sure that little details are right and things like that.
I feel like you may be touching on something there that I'm pretty curious about because the music row style writing, where there's a lot more architecture. to something as opposed to instinct. It's the intro, verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, out, right? And I'm curious where you find the balance of instinct to architecture, where the art is within it, as opposed to where the commercialism still has to remain. What is that like to you when you're in the writing process?
I don't, I mean, commercialism, not really doing the music row songwriting thing anymore. It's one of my least favorite things that happens in this town is you get in some of those rooms where the minute you start writing something, before you've even gotten to a solid idea, you're just sort of like, here's kind of an idea. And you'll get these writers that are like, yeah, but I don't know if Luke Combs would say that. And it's like, what does that even mean? Like, I don't like, this is a melody. Or they'll say, well, that feels like maybe it's an album cut, but not a single. And I don't know, those moments where I just feel like you're just shitting on things from the start. And maybe those people live in way bigger houses than I do. So, I mean, maybe there's a justification for it. But I just don't like writing like that. I think that the Music Row songwriting bit, especially right now, there are great songs that get written on Music Row, and they have for years. But I think we're in a phase right now where lots of the songs that are getting written, they're just really bad. They're written to lowest common denominator. One, you got 5 writers on a song, and basically you don't have anybody that loves it. You just have 5 people that don't mind it. And those aren't songs I care much for. I would much rather have, and they're so worried about over explaining everything. Well, we got to make sure that the people understand what we're saying. And I don't believe, I don't want to play music for an audience of people that are stupid, that can't form an opinion about what does this song mean to them. Strawberry Fields Forever. I don't know that that's actually about strawberries or fields, or if it's even about forever. But I know that what I feel when I hear that song is, and then sometimes that's different. That's different now when I listen to that song versus when I listened to it when I was 15. But that's what I love. But if I don't know how much room for interpretation there is for someone thinking your tractor is sexy. I don't know that that is rich. It's rich in single entendre, I guess. Uh,
Yeah.
so I don't know. I think that the commercialism part is not a concern for me, and my accountant can attest to that. But um, I do think of the radio. Like I still think of, I love songs that fit within a 3.5 minute thing. I still like the idea of, lots of times when I'm thinking about a song or what it needs or a guitar solo, I do still think on, if I was in my teens or 20s and I was riding down the road and listening to this on CD or on the radio, like what would make me want to turn this up? Like I go way more for chill bumps than I do dollar signs, if that makes any sense.
It works too. I mean, just going through all the songs. I mean, it's so good. I'm actually going to make 2026 for me the year of Will Hoge. I'm going to get every album. I'm going to go 1 through 15. I know you got on Bandcamp. You got a lot of
Yeah.
live stuff locally that you can listen to. Um, in 2008, Will, you came within inches of your life from an accident on a motor vehicle of the two-wheel variety. Some say it's a motorbike. Some say it was a Vespa style scooter. We just still don't really have that answer. But I want to know, since your recovery, have you ventured back onto two-wheel transportation?
No, it was a Vespa style motor scooter, just to put any of that to rest.
Okay.
It sounds way cooler when you say motorcycle wreck, but it also sounds way worse if you say he was on a scooter. Then I think it's one of those kick scooters that I'm
Not
riding
bird
around
scooter.
downtown. Yeah, it wasn't like a lime scooter. It was very European of me.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
you must get PTSD every time you go downtown in Nashville and see all those scooters.
yeah, it's pretty crazy. But and sorry, what was the question? No, I have not been
Well,
back. My wife, we'd only been married for um, we got married in January. The accident was
mm,
August, so however many months that is. Yeah, no, she put her foot down understandably and just said, "Look, any two-wheeled vehicles other than a bicycle will just be. I'll just assume that you want a divorce at that point." And so I don't want a divorce, and I don't really want a two-wheeled scooter that bad anyway.
Good
I have
move.
a tattoo to remind me to not ride them anymore. Yeah, it's a no
Look at
scooters
that. That is
tattoo there.
funny.
Oh,
So,
cool.
Well,
yeah,
hey Will, we're glad you're still here, and you've put out incredible music since that time. So
thank
we're
you.
glad you're still around.
Yeah, talking about how much music you've been putting out and everything. You have, I mean, 15 studio albums. That's more than a lot of artists ever reach. Um, I'm curious about we talked about work ethic and stuff earlier on. I'm curious about your daily operational habits that keep you productive on that level for so many decades. A lot of artists, it's easy to fall into a rut. It's easy to get lazy. Even self-employed people in general, and you're running the business of Will Hoge, it's very easy to, I'm just going to take a day off. I'm going to do whatever I want to do. How do you stay the level that you are and as productive as you are? What are those habits like?
Well, some of it is allowing yourself to do the things that you just mentioned. I mean, like I don't. I mean, I could try to be cool and be like, look, every single day I wake up and I come into my studio and I start writing a song. Like the truth is, like, there are days where I go to the gym and I come back and I walk the dogs and then I hang with my kids and I go to the mall. Like I don't do fuck all for art or work those days. I think those are kind of days where you're on input rather than output. Um,
Yeah.
I like to sit in the quiet sometimes and not do any of this. Um, but when I'm doing it, I try to really focus on it, and um, it really is. I mean, over the course of this conversation, there may be things that I've said that sound maybe bitter or uh, and I'm really not. Like, I still, at the end of the day, and I've started doing more production and studio work, so that's been really helpful also, like finding new creative outlets to use the skills that I've built over these years. It's not always just about making my record. It's like, how can I help somebody find the joy in the studio and realize what a gift it is to get to do this. I mean, that's never lost on me. Every day that I get to do this, I feel so lucky about it. I still love the work. I mean, I love writing songs. I mean, I'm in the studio doing drum overdubs right before I called you guys.
Hmm.
Always trying to learn something new, I think, can be really important. Playing a different instrument. I mean, I look at that all as the same. I mean, it's not like every day I'm just in here trying to write another song. It's just trying to constantly grow as an artist. I think I'm trying to continually expose myself to other types of art. I've become friends with some guys and girls who are authors and who are visual artists. I think for years I looked at myself as sort of a dumb rock and roll singer songwriter. Like, this was really lowbrow art, and lots of other things were highbrow art. And what I've learned is it's all just art. I think back to like the English and the London scene in the '60s. I always kind of come back to where everybody, the Beatles were going to see the Stones and going to see Hendrix, but then also going to see art and going to see plays and reading books and seeing movies. Um, I'm much more interested in that than I am, um, just trying to sort of do a Nashville Music Row thing, I think. So
Mm.
how do I think that's how you stay growing and entertained and productive. It's just by being involved, watching my kids and their bands, become a thing and just be awful and learn not to be awful. Like, it's incredibly uh, inspirational to watch.
Hey, willhogue.com. We're talking to Will Hoge today. Sweet Misery is the new record. I don't think you're coming across bitter at all. I think you're coming across very thoughtful and approachable, and
Well, thank you.
and the guy we hoped you'd be.
Oh, well, good,
So so
good.
thank you, Will.
Yeah, of course.
I was watching a video where you pulling an audible at the Wonder Bar in Asbury Park. You were playing a fan request, and you felt you might be putting out a shoddy version, but the audience responded so enthusiastically that you really seemed moved by it. And I got me to thinking, what are your best markets? Where do you get the best fan reception?
It's we've always tended to do well in bigger cities and the sort of major places, but it's interesting as the audience continues to grow and sort of get older and have families, that starts to change where we used to, you know, New York has moved to Asbury Park or things like that. It's fun to sort of watch the world change around us. And to be completely cliched, it's a really funny thing to talk about Italy and Spain and the UK and places like that, where all of a sudden, I'd never been. And now we go, and some of my favorite markets are, Valencia and Madrid and places like that, where you get people where English is maybe a second, sometimes a third language, and they still show up and sing along. That's pretty special to get to see that continue to grow too.
That's awesome.
Curious, you have moved through so many styles and genres over the years with your songwriting and with your releases as your artistry and everything. How have you it still felt very Will Hoge identity the entire time. It's never actually diverted from that, but it's like Will Hoge does this, Will Hoge does this, right? How have you managed to pull that off and evolve without diluting your brand? It's something that I think a lot of artists want to try, but aren't sure how to do it, or they're afraid to cross genres. And you seem to have done it in a really masterful way. What do you think is the ethos behind that?
Well, thank you. It's always been honest. I mean, I'm not. I couldn't do that. Like if I love uh, hip hop. I mean, like I don't listen to tons of it, but I'm not one of those guys that thinks it's a lesser. Like I really find some of that art form like really powerful. I find it lyrically inspiring, rhythmically inspiring. I mean, I can spend hours at a time listening to certain bits of that. But if tomorrow I was like, man, I really want to make a hip hop record, it's probably going to come off as disingenuous, because that's not really who I am or where I'm from. I think the thing is with the detours I've made musically, ultimately it's still because I think it works because it's truly who I am. I grew up with a access to a record collection through my father that was, you know, they were alphabetized, but there was no genre differentiation. So it was like the Beatles were literally almost right next to Buck Owens. And so, you know, uh, I never saw a difference where I think some people grew up and were like, okay, well, I like rock or I like country or whatever it is. I would listen to Buck Owens and Aretha Franklin and the Beatles and Led Zeppelin and the Stray Cats and um, Tom Petty or whatever it is, James Brown. Like it was all just, this is just what I like. I never saw a huge difference in those things. And so I think that whichever canvas I'm painting on, as long as it's sort of still going to draw from that color palette. So I hope that I'm glad that you don't feel like it's um, fake. I think that it's very much what I grew up listening to, filtered through my own life experience and things like that. So,
Yeah, I love that concept of a color palette. That's a really interesting way of looking at it.
yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of what it's always been. If I'm going to, again, like if I went and all of a sudden tried to make some sort of screamo record at this point, it's not really gonna work because it's not. I hear some of that through my kids, and I can find little pieces of it and go, oh, I love the way they transition into that bridge, or I love that melody in that part, or whatever. I can do that and bring that into my own work. But if all of a sudden I go and try to make a record like that, it's just not gonna be good. It's also just it's because it's just not what I do. I mean, I think that sometimes understanding your own game and your prowess for what you're good at, you don't go and watch um, moving it into other realms. Like, you go watch Steph Curry play basketball, like he's going to shoot the ball from 60 feet out. That's kind of what he does. But, he's not going to go post you up and try to play center because that's not really what he does. I think as artists, you always want to grow and push yourself, and you can do that. You can bring in little pieces of things. But again, back to the songwriting thing, it's like find your voice. What is your voice? Um, what does your art sound like? And you can always add little pieces, but you know,
When you were talking about genre and country music, my ears have always heard you more as a singular rock artist, mainly. But you're also on the fringes of country music. And 2015's Small Town Dreams was probably perceived as your main country record. I don't know if I'm wrong or not. Um, on that record, you had a song called Itty Bitty Dreams, where you talked about being a movie star and a pitcher for the Yankees. So, have you ever considered acting? Because you have the rugged good looks where you could work, that would work well on the big screen. And were you actually a pitcher growing up?
I did. Well, I'm incredibly flattered by your kind words about my handsome, good looks. No, I've never considered acting. I did at one point around the same time you were talking about. I went and the only time I've read for a part, they were casting for something that was co-starring with Anne Hathaway, and my manager was like, "Do you want to read for this?" And my wife and I looked it over, and she said, "There's a scene where you potentially have to kiss Anne Hathaway, so you have to go read for this movie." And so I did that. I didn't get the part, understandably so. I'm not a very good actor. Uh, and then what was the other part of that?
Were you actually a pitcher in youth
Oh
baseball?
yeah, I did. I played. I was more of a basketball player. I played basketball through high school, and when I went away to college for 20 minutes. But I was always better at that. That was my main sport. I did play baseball growing up. I did pitch when I was 10, 10 or 12, and then from there I kind of gave that up. I was a good pitcher because I have really small hands, and so I couldn't hold the ball as a 10-year-old like you should. So I threw like a weird palm ball, and I threw really slow because I was so weak, and it was incredibly difficult to hit. So that doesn't translate well into the majors. The Yankees aren't going to call me for that, but as far as a 10-year-old goes, pretty
Right. I
impressive.
mean, I grew up watching like the 76 to 78 Yankees, so I was a fan.
Yes.
I was an all-star pitcher for about 1 year, but then biology took over and everybody else grew around me, and I stayed tiny, so I wasn't really
That's
able to stay
that's that
in the
cruel
game.
joke, man. I get it.
Social media, has it been a bane or a boon to your existence?
I mean, I guess it could be both. It's an incredible tool. It's a really shitty addiction. So if you can use it and not be addicted to it, I think it's definitely a boon. If you prioritize that over actually writing good songs and making records, definitely a bust.
And in an era where we're way past MTV being what it was, you still like making videos. I saw one where you did a one-shot clip in Gallatin, Tennessee.
Yeah.
It was just phenomenal to watch, but I wanted to know what type of preparation and planning goes into, and how long does that process actually take to get a 3-minute video?
I mean, it's different. That video in particular, there were some really great directors involved, and that was all one shot. It took three times, partially through. On the third time, we got the whole thing, which was really fun. Videos, I still love doing them in a way just because I grew up with it the same way that there are people make an argument that records and albums don't matter anymore because nobody consumes records the way they did, but it still matters to me. I still think full albums, and I like the idea of visual things that go with that, even if it's just a band playing. I mean, like you're saying, if you grew up watching MTV, there's always a part of you that kind of harkens back to those video things with songs too.
Well, I've got one more for us to close us out. Rich, you have any
Close it.
more before we do it?
I'm good.
All right.
All right, this is the deep one. This is the one that gets people to start thinking about stuff real deep, real quick.
All right.
I am very curious. You have obviously shown so much like gratitude throughout your career, and especially in this interview, like talking about the way you've talked about your career, just immense gratitude for so many elements of your life. And I'm very curious what the kindest thing anyone has ever done for you is.
Within this business or just in life in general?
In life in general.
Wow. Kindest thing. That's a really, really good question. My wife is also a therapist, and she's going to be so proud that this is a question
She's gonna love
that
that question.
yeah, she's going to be using this a lot, I'm sure, and then she's going to want to know what my answer was. The
Yeah.
kindest thing. Um, Man, I will overthink this probably. My When I turned 50, I was on the road. I tend to always be on the road around my birthday. And my wife and kids, and my wife especially, planned this surprise where they flew a bunch of people in for my 50th birthday. And I'm not easily surprised. Like, they had planned all of this exquisitely. Um,
Mm.
and so I was really surprised by that. I felt incredibly loved and cared for. So that was really, and then there were just, um, that part was nice, but my kids also. So the kindness that my wife showed to really make me feel special, that meant a lot. My kids also wrote. They bought these little notebooks and wrote 50 things in there that they memories of me as a dad or things like that, things that I taught them. Um, I don't know. I don't know if that truly qualifies as kindness, because in some ways you would say, well, it's expected to do that. But I'm not always great at receiving anything like that. And so I felt like that was a moment where it was truly, uh, it all just felt kind and I felt very cared for. So I think for now that would have to be my answer. But I may think about this and have to call y'all back and come up with something else.
It sounds like we've got a second interview coming up then. I'm for it.
I love it. I'm all for a kindness podcast. So yeah, this
It's
makes a
all
lot of
part of the
sense.
process.
I
Yeah.
love that. Will, thank you so much for your time today. We're grateful for you. Rich, do you have any final questions, any shout outs you want to give?
Um, hey, what what's 2026 look like for you?
I'm finishing a couple records for other artists, production wise, working on a couple of things. I think there's going to be a live record from me and the band that was recorded over the course of 2025. Um, and then there's a couple of Will Hoge records that we're trying to figure out when those will get done. And then shows. We'll be back in Europe, and then be back out on the road here, middle of the spring probably. So just
Hey,
always
Will,
working.
midterms are coming up.
Yeah, we'll have to do something about that.
Well, thank you for talking to us, Will Hoge. Really appreciate it today.
Man, thank you guys. I really do appreciate it. Thank you.
Grateful for you. Have a great rest of your day. Thank
Y'all
you.
too. All right.